Yes, gaining time between the United States and Iran is not only possible but is already a central feature of how their relationship currently operates, especially in periods of heightened tension or stalled negotiations. Rather than moving quickly toward either full-scale conflict or a comprehensive agreement, both countries often settle into a pattern of delay, partial engagement, and indirect communication. This time-buying approach can be seen in the way diplomatic talks are conducted, frequently through intermediaries, paused and restarted, or extended without clear outcomes. Instead of final treaties, there are temporary understandings, informal arrangements, or simply a continuation of the status quo. This reflects a deeper strategic reality. Neither side finds it beneficial to rush into a decisive confrontation, yet both are unwilling to fully concede on core issues such as Iran's nuclear ambitions, regional influence, or U.S. sanctions. As a result, time itself becomes a valuable asset. By slowing down the process, both sides can avoid immediate risks while keeping their options open. For example, delaying decisions allows leaders to manage domestic political pressures, test the reactions of allies and rivals, and observe changes in the global environment. It also reduces the likelihood of sudden escalation, which could lead to unpredictable and potentially uncontrollable consequences. In many ways, this situation represents a classic diplomatic stalemate, where movement is limited but complete breakdown is avoided. Importantly, this is not simply inactivity, it is an active strategy. Both Washington and Tehran use signaling, controlled tensions, and selective cooperation to shape the pace of events. Small steps, such as prisoner exchanges, limited sanctions relief discussions, or back-channel negotiations, help maintain a fragile balance without resolving the underlying conflict. At the same time, occasional flare-ups, such as military incidents or sharp rhetoric, serve as reminders that the situation can change quickly, which adds urgency but does not necessarily break the cycle of delay. This kind of prolonged engagement is common in international politics when two adversaries have enough power to resist each other but not enough to impose a clear outcome. Therefore, gaining time is not just a possibility, it is a deliberate and ongoing tactic used by both the United States and Iran to navigate a complex and high-stakes rivalry without forcing an immediate and potentially dangerous resolution. In terms of who benefits more from this strategy of delay, Iran tends to gain the greater advantage in the short term, largely because time provides it with much-needed breathing space. Facing economic sanctions, political pressure, and periodic military threats from the United States and its allies, Iran uses delays in negotiations to stabilize its internal situation and avoid making immediate, high-stakes concessions. By prolonging talks, Tehran can manage domestic expectations, strengthen its regional alliances, and gradually adapt to economic restrictions rather than being forced into sudden compliance. This slow pace also allows Iran to maintain ambiguity around sensitive issues like its nuclear program, which increases its bargaining power. Instead of committing to strict limitations under pressure, it can negotiate step by step, extracting concessions such as partial sanctions relief or diplomatic recognition in return for limited cooperation. In addition, time helps Iran observe shifts in global politics, such as changing leadership in Western countries or evolving alliances, which might improve its negotiating position. Another key advantage for Iran is that delay reduces immediate risks. Rapid escalation could lead to direct conflict with the United States, something Iran generally seeks to avoid due to the imbalance in conventional military power. By stretching out the timeline, Iran lowers the chance of sudden confrontation while continuing to assert influence indirectly through regional networks and strategic positioning. Moreover, prolonged negotiations can create divisions among international actors, as not all countries share the same urgency or approach toward Iran. This fragmentation weakens unified pressure and gives Tehran more room to maneuver diplomatically. In this sense, time is not just passive waiting, it becomes an active shield that protects Iran from immediate threats while slowly improving its strategic flexibility. However, this advantage is not absolute or guaranteed. While Iran gains short-term relief, prolonged delay also carries costs, including continued economic hardship, public dissatisfaction, and the risk of miscalculation if tensions suddenly spike. Still, when comparing immediate benefits, Iran's ability to use time as a buffer against pressure gives it a noticeable edge in the short run. It transforms delay into leverage, allowing the country to navigate a difficult geopolitical environment without being forced into quick decisions that could limit its long-term strategic goals. While Iran may benefit more in the short term, the United States is better positioned to gain from time over the long run, largely because of its stronger economic base, global alliances, and ability to sustain pressure. Unlike Iran, which faces ongoing economic strain, the U.S. can afford to wait while maintaining sanctions and diplomatic isolation measures that gradually weaken Iran's economy and limit its international reach. Over time, this sustained pressure can reduce Iran's negotiating power, forcing it to consider compromises it might otherwise reject. In addition, the U.S. uses this extended timeline to coordinate with allies in Europe and other regions, building a broader coalition that reinforces its position and makes it harder for Iran to break out of isolation. This long-game strategy reflects confidence that structural advantages, economic strength, military reach, and diplomatic influence, will eventually shift the balance in Washington's favor. Another important factor is that time allows the United States to shape the broader geopolitical environment. By maintaining a prolonged standoff, it can influence global energy markets, strengthen partnerships in the Middle East, and respond to Iran's actions with calibrated measures rather than rushed decisions. This reduces the risk of costly mistakes and ensures that any escalation happens on terms more favorable to the U.S. Furthermore, internal challenges within Iran, such as inflation, political divisions, and public dissatisfaction, may intensify over time, indirectly serving U.S. objectives without direct confrontation. In contrast, the U.S. system is generally more resilient to prolonged external disputes, allowing it to absorb the costs of delay more effectively. However, this long-term advantage is not guaranteed or absolute. Prolonged tension increases the risk of miscalculation, accidental conflict, or shifts in global politics that could undermine U.S. strategy. Rising powers, changing alliances, or unexpected regional crises could alter the balance and give Iran new opportunities. Even so, if the current pattern continues without major disruption, the strategic logic favors the United States over time. In simple terms, Iran uses time to survive and adapt in the present, while the U.S. uses time to apply steady pressure and shape future outcomes, turning delay into a long-term strategic tool rather than just a temporary pause.